Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
What we do here is take important info, research reports, that kind of thing, and we basically pull out the key bits for you.
Yeah, sort of a shortcut. Helps you get a handle on complex stuff without drowning in data.
Exactly. So today we're focusing on something pretty serious. Which countries have the highest risk of natural disasters?
And we're using a solid source for this, the Risk Assessment Index from Harvard University's World Risk Report.
Right. And this isn't just counting disasters, is it?
No, not at all. It's more nuanced. It looks at three main things.
Yeah.
How exposed a country is to hazards, how, vulnerable its people are, and then how well they can actually cope and adapt afterwards.
Okay, so exposure, vulnerability, capacity. Got it. And the global picture here is, honestly, it's pretty grim.
It really is. We're talking over 160 million people affected every single year.
Wow.
And the economic damage, over $140 billion annually.
And climate change is just making this worse, right?
Unfortunately, yes, that's the trend. It's accelerating things.
And the types of disasters we're covering here, it's a long list.
Oh, yeah. Everything from, typhoons, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions,
Tsunamis, monsoons, droughts, floods.
cyclones, wildfires, landslides, storm surges, even extreme heat waves, and just general severe weather. It's comprehensive.
So our mission today is to dig into why certain countries are so high on this list. It's more than just bad luck.
Definitely deeper factors involved. Geography, socioeconomic stuff. It all connects.
All right, let's jump right in. Top of the list, the Philippines.
Yeah, the Philippines. Highest risk score, 46.86.
And the first thing that hits you is just the sheer number of threats they face, isn't it?
Absolutely. You've got earthquakes, for one. And then there's the typhoons. They're right in the Pacific typhoon belt.
Which means what exactly? Lots of storms.
Lots of storms, like an average of 20 typhoons a year. 20, some incredibly powerful.
Wow. And the report mentions population vulnerability, especially in remote areas.
That's key. A lot of people live on islands that are harder to reach, especially after a disaster hits. Makes getting aid there really tough.
And it's not just typhoons and earthquakes.
No, you also have frequent floods, those heavy tropical monsoons.
I remember Super Typhoon Haiyan. Devastating.
Exactly. A terrible example of that vulnerability. And then think about the big cities like Manila.
Overpopulated, you mean?
Yeah, and just imagine trying to coordinate an emergency response in a place that dense. It's a huge logistical challenge.
Okay, so a really complex and high-risk situation in the Philippines. Let's move to number 2. Indonesia.
Indonesia's next, yeah. Score 43.50. Still very high.
And similar issues with geography. Lots of islands.
Very similar in that respect. It's an archipelago, thousands of islands. And again, you have vulnerable populations living in pretty remote spots.
Indonesia's also right on the ring of fire, isn't it?
Smack bang in it. Which means, constant tectonic activity.
So earthquakes and volcanoes are just a regular occurrence.
Pretty much. And with that comes the risk of tsunamis, unfortunately.
The 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. Indonesia was hit so hard.
Terribly hard. It's a stark reminder of the power of those events.
And it's not just the remote places.
Right.
Even tourist spots.
That's right. Even somewhere like Bali, which people think of as paradise, is susceptible to tsunamis, earthquakes, even volcanic eruptions.
So travelers really need to be aware.
Absolutely. Follow official advice, stay informed. Natural beauty and natural hazards can definitely go hand in hand.
Okay. Number 3 then, India. Score 41.52.
India. Now, the first thing you think about here is just the sheer scale, right? 1.4 billion people.
Yeah, that automatically means any disaster has the potential to affect a massive number of people.
Exactly. And they deal with a lot. Powerful monsoons, bringing floods.
But also droughts in other areas.
Severe droughts, yeah. And typhoons along the coast. It's a real mix of hazards.
And vulnerability seems high, too. Poverty remote regions.
Yes, significant poverty, lots of people in remote areas. And the report notes something interesting. Even in cities, getting access to emergency services isn't always straightforward.
That is surprising, given India's development in some areas. Why is that, do you think?
Well, it points to issues with perhaps resource distribution or infrastructure gaps. It's complex.
And we've seen recent examples, haven't we? Heat waves, droughts.
Tragically, yes, causing casualties. And looking ahead, climate change projections for India are really quite concerning. They're expected to be hit hard.
Worrying. Okay, let's cross the globe to Mexico. Score 38.17. But it has the second highest exposure rating.
That's right, 50.08 on exposure, meaning a very large chunk of the country and its population are directly in the path of potential hazards.
And like Indonesia, the Pacific Ring of Fire plays a big role.
Huge role. That's the main driver for their frequent earthquakes.
But it's not just earthquakes.
No. You've got hurricane risk along the Pacific coast, plus active volcanoes in the Sierra Madre Mountains.
And Mexico City.
Yeah.
That's a huge population center, over 20 million people.
Massive. And they face risks from both earthquakes and drought. Imagine a major quake hitting that city.
The potential impact is staggering.
It is, and climate change is just going to make disaster preparedness even more challenging for Mexico going forward, especially for a megacity like that.
Absolutely. Right next up, Colombia. Score 37.64, extremely high risk,
Yeah, Colombia. It's interesting because it's also a popular vacation spot.
despite the risks.
Well, again, it shows how natural beauty and geological activity can overlap. It's also on the Ring of Fire.
So earthquakes are a risk there too. What else?
Varied terrain means different risks. Fires, floods, landslides, especially in remote areas. And yes, occasional major earthquakes.
The report mentions something else for Colombia, political and social insecurities. How does that factor in?
Well, it can seriously hinder disaster response. If an area is already unstable, getting aid in, coordinating efforts,
Yeah.
it becomes much, much harder.
So vulnerability isn't just about geography, it's social and political too.
Absolutely. They're deeply intertwined. So for travelers, the advice is clear. Stay informed, register with your embassy.
Makes sense. Okay, Myanmar. Score 36.16, still high risk.
Myanmar, yes. And there was a recent powerful earthquake near Yangon mentioned in the report, wasn't there?
Yeah, very recent reminder.
So they have the earthquake risk, but also, like others we've seen, powerful monsoons and floods.
And again, large populations in remote areas.
Yes, that pattern repeats. Harder to reach, harder to help.
But Myanmar has another layer of complexity, the civil war.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
long-standing conflict, which, you can imagine, makes any kind of coordinated disaster response incredibly difficult, if not impossible in some areas.
A really tough combination of factors.
It really is. So
Yeah.
again, for anyone going there, embassy registration, follow warnings closely, have an emergency plan, essential stuff.
Okay, shifting continents now. Mozambique scored 34.61.
Mozambique. Here, the focus seems to shift more towards water and weather-related disasters. Hydrometeorological, I think is the term.
Right. Floods, droughts, cyclones.
Very much so. Frequent, significant floods, especially in its river basins, severe droughts at other times, and it's vulnerable to powerful tropical cyclones coming off the Indian Ocean.
Is there any earthquake risk?
Some, yes. It's near the Eastern African Rift System, so there's seismic potential there too.
And like several others, socioeconomic factors are a big issue.
A major issue. A lot of people live outside the easy reach of emergency services, lacking basic resources. Poverty and infrastructure gaps really magnify the impact of any disaster.
So when a disaster hits, people are already struggling.
Precisely. It can be absolutely devastating. Standard advice applies. Check in with your embassy if you're traveling there.
Got it. Now, Russia scored 28.2. Maybe a bit lower, but
Yeah.
still on the list. Why Russia?
Well, Russia is just vast, isn't it? Immense, varied geography.
So different risks in different places.
Exactly. While some parts are highly developed, huge areas are incredibly remote, very hard for emergency services to get to.
And what kind of threats are we talking about?
Flooding, droughts, increasingly powerful wildfires, we've seen those in recent years, and of course, just incredibly harsh winters in many regions.
And infrastructure is an issue in those remote areas.
A major risk factor, yes. Lack of infrastructure, and that's compounded by political issues, poverty in some regions, and obviously the current war with Ukraine, which drains resources and complicates everything.
So geopolitical factors playing a direct role again.
Definitely. So for tourists, it really requires careful risk assessment and following embassy advice very closely.
Okay. Bangladesh next. Scored 27.29. Its location seems key here.
Absolutely key. Bangladesh is basically a giant river delta, very low-lying.
Making it incredibly prone to flooding.
Extremely prone. The monsoons bring massive rainfall, leading to severe, widespread floods almost every year. Millions are at risk.
And it's not just river flooding, is it?
No, you also have the danger from cyclones coming in from the Bay of Bengal and the storm surges they create. Plus, the population density is very high, especially in those low-lying coastal areas.
The Bay of Bengal acts like a funnel for storms, the report said. That sounds terrifying.
It concentrates the energy, yeah. And then you add rising sea levels from climate change.
It makes the whole situation even more precarious, especially for cities like Dhaka.
Dhaka is a huge concern. Massive population, much of it near sea level, in flood zones. The risk is escalating.
And disaster preparedness isn't great.
Generally poor, unfortunately. Widespread poverty, other socioeconomic issues. It makes it hard to build resilience.
A really stark picture of vulnerability. Okay, China scored 27.9, but it has the highest exposure index.
That's the standout stat for China, yeah. Exposure index of 64.59. So while the overall risk score is a bit lower, the sheer number of people potentially affected by any disaster is enormous.
Because of its size and population.
Exactly. Vast country, incredibly diverse terrain, huge rural populations. The scale is immense.
Are the major cities safe?
Not entirely. Even huge coastal cities like Hong Kong and Shanghai are in the path of tropical cyclones, and they face risks from river flooding, too.
And other background pressures.
Yeah, the report mentions things like overpopulation in certain areas, ongoing drought issues, and growing water scarcity. These all add strain, especially when a disaster hits.
So underlying stresses make crises worse.
Pretty much. So for travelers, keep a close eye on news and weather, register with your embassy. Standard procedure, but important.
All right. Pakistan is number 11, score 26.45. What are the main threats there?
Pakistan faces a mix, really. Severe droughts, yes.
Yeah.
Earthquakes, particularly in the north. Landslides are also a risk.
Ghanaian too.
Yes, heavy rains cause major flooding along the river basins. And the coast isn't immune either. Risk from earthquakes, potential tsunamis from the Arabian Sea, and cyclones.
And similar to others, poverty and infrastructure issues make things worse.
That's a recurring theme, isn't it? Severe poverty, challenges with infrastructure.
Right.
They definitely compound the natural risks and make recovery much harder.
So constant vigilance is needed.
For residents and visitors, yes. Check the news, check weather, register with the embassy, be prepared.
Okay, last one on our list, Papua New Guinea. Score 26.3. Tectonically active region, it says.
Very active. Minor earthquakes are almost a daily occurrence there.
Daily. Wow, so the risk of a big one is always there.
It is, and that seismic activity also increases risks like tsunamis and landslides, especially in the mountainous areas. Plus, they face floods, cyclones, severe weather generally.
And the vulnerability factor, remote populations again.
Very much so. Many communities are rural, isolated, far from emergency services.
Meaning help might not arrive quickly or at all.
That's the unfortunate reality in many cases. When disaster strikes, people can be cut off, and getting help to them is a massive challenge. Many might go without significant assistance.
So for travelers there, it's really crucial to be prepared and cautious.
Absolutely. Let people know your plans, follow embassy advice, listen to local emergency services. Safety first.
Well, this has been quite the tour of global risk zones. A lot to take in.
It really highlights how complex this issue is.
Yeah, the key takeaway for me is that it's this mix, isn't it? Geography, climate, definitely climate change now, and then the social and economic factors within a country. They all weave together.
Perfectly put. And it creates the situation where some nations are just far more vulnerable than others to these devastating events.
And the human cost, the economic cost,
Yeah.
it's huge. And as you said, climate change is making it worse.
It's an amplifying threat, no doubt about it.
It really makes you think about how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
You know, from geology miles below our feet to weather patterns across the globe to poverty and infrastructure within a nation.
All these pieces contribute to the overall disaster risk profile.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to chew on. If we understand these complex risks better, how can that actually shape what we do globally?
Right. How does it inform disaster preparedness, how we adapt to climate change, how we deliver humanitarian aid more effectively?
Yeah, lots to think about there. We definitely encourage you to check out the World Risk Report itself and other research on this. It's a really important topic.
Absolutely. Keep exploring.